Good afternoon to you, Mr. Elliott Abrams, former Deputy National Security Advisor of President Bush.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Abrams, my question is a very simple one. Was there any agreement on the issue of settlement between the Israeli government and the Bush administration?
Simple question, simple answer, yes. As I wrote in the Wall Street Journal this week, we did have an agreement. It was worked out over a period of months between an American team and the Israelis, which included Dubi Weissglass, Shalom Turgeman, and of course Prime Minister Sharon.
What was the nature of the agreement?
Well, Prime Minister Sharon expressed it very simply in his Herzliya speech in December 2003. It was an agreement of a few principles, guidelines, you might say. No new settlements, no financial incentives to get people to go into settlements, building only within the construction line of existing settlements, and no confiscation of land for settlements.
What about the issue of natural growth of the settlement?
Well, we included that because if you permitted construction within the construction area, then you had room in most settlements for there to be construction. The idea was this: if you're building new settlements or expanding physically, you can see how this can affect Palestinians if you have to take land that is theirs, or a road or a field that is theirs. If you're not, if you're building inside or you're building up rather than out, this has no impact on Palestinian life today, and it has no impact on a possible final status negotiation.
And that was the agreement. That was the nature of the agreement.
That was it.
Did you, Mr. Abrams, participate in the conversations, in the contacts vis-à-vis this issue yourself?
Yes. Yes. Through a number of visits here that I made myself, that I made with Steve Hadley when he was Deputy National Security Advisor. This is the first term of President Bush. And in conversations we had in Washington, and in fact in conversations between the President and Prime Minister Sharon, for example, in Aqaba in June of 2003.
What did you allow, actually, the Israeli government in terms of settlements policy?
Well, the idea was that the settlements could grow in or up rather than out. We were not so concerned about the population. We were concerned about the land. So as long as they did not grow out, there was no problem.
How do you explain the statement of Secretary of State Clinton, who said there was no enforceable agreement about this issue? She said it in a press conference with our foreign minister, Mr. Lieberman.
Yes. Well, it's true that there was no formal agreement, if by that is meant a treaty, a written memorandum of understanding. That did not exist. These were oral agreements. These were conversations, although there were conversations between the President and the Prime Minister. And then statements in public, for example, that the Prime Minister made at Herzliya and other times. I think the problem may be that if you have a book that is handed to you that says, here are the 15 or 17 or 23 agreements between Israel and the United States, you won't find it there because it was not that kind of formal agreement. But as I said in this article I wrote, the Secretary of State was wrong in saying there was no enforceable agreement, although I don't know what is an enforceable agreement. What does it mean anyway? How do you enforce an agreement between Israel and the United States?
This is an understanding between two allies, so to speak.
Exactly. So nothing is really enforceable. It's part of an ongoing and very close relationship.
Would you say that Secretary Clinton misled the public in her statement?
No, I think that Secretary Clinton probably didn't have the information that she should have had. And I guess this is a failure of our transition from one president to another. Because it's easy to give all the documents, and I know that we did give all the documents, books and books full of documents. The problem is briefings on what were, in a sense, oral agreements, and maybe we didn't do a good enough job on that.
So would you expect that Secretary Clinton will correct her former statement, or this is not expected by the Secretary of State?
Well, I've never seen it happen. I don't think any Secretary of State gets up and says, well, I got that one wrong.
Do you feel today that the settlement, the Israeli settlements in Judea and Samaria, are they obstacles to a process of peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians? How do you see it?
I'm struck by the fact that if you look at the offer that was made at Camp David by Prime Minister Barak
in July 2000.
In July 2000, then go forward almost 10 years to the offer that Prime Minister Olmert made in December, and in January of 2009, Olmert made actually a better offer, a more generous offer to the Palestinians, 10 years later. Now, if 10 years of settlement construction result in a better offer, how can you say that this was an obstacle to a final status agreement? The obstacle in this case was that Mahmoud Abbas said no. That was the problem. I can see that, a vast expansion of settlements today, new settlements all over the place, vast physical expansion of settlements would present a problem, but that is not happening. So I do not see this as an obstacle. I see, to me, security is really still the question.
And the agreement which was made between Prime Minister Sharon and President Bush at the time did not serve as an obstacle to a peace process or some kind of a process.
On the contrary, I think we were very careful. We were trying to see what could create a new obstacle. And again, I think the physical expansion could. And what we agreed on was that there would be only a population growth possibility. There wouldn't be a possibility of great physical expansion. I think we took that into account, and I think we had a good deal.
Mr. Abrams, I would like to ask you, from your perspective, how would you define the change towards Israel under the Obama administration up till now, from your experience?
Well, it's early yet. I would say that...
But there are signs.
There are signs that this administration doesn't feel quite the same way about Israel that the Bush administration did.
In what way?
Well, if you go back to President Bush's speech to the Knesset on the 60th anniversary of Israel's birth, which is 13 months ago, I think that was a great Zionist speech. I mean, it was a great speech in the history of Zionism. It was a wonderful speech. And I don't think you see that in previous presidents, frankly, and in this president. I think part of the problem is that you had such a great and deep friend in President Bush. And it looks as if this administration does not yet, at least, feel that deeply toward Israel.
They are not so warm towards Israel like the previous administration.
Right. I think the previous administration, I mean, I was part of it, so I'm a little bit prejudiced here, but had a special appreciation of Israel that really has been very rare.
Do you foresee in the near future or in the far future a conflict between the Israeli government and the Obama administration?
No, I don't think so. I see disagreements. I mean, there are already disagreements, settlements being the best example.
The issue, yes.
But there are always disagreements. I mean, we had disagreements in the Bush years. The question is how you handle those. But I can tell you that there were numerous times in those 8 years when we simply did not agree. But we did not let that undermine or erode the fundamental relationship we had.
And this is probably, in your opinion, the basic change.
Well, I'm not sure yet where President Obama is going to end up, and this is the question. I mean, I think he's been given some advice that I'm not so sure is very good in the early months, and I'd like to see this ship get back on an even keel in the relationship between Israel and the U.S.
I would like to thank you very much, Mr. Elliott Abrams, former Deputy National Security Advisor to President Bush. Thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.
Thank you.